What's going on? Welcome to the Walk podcast powered by Model Match. It's a good walk, especially if you're putting on your boots and actually doing it Nashville style.
Yeah.
Okay, in this episode, we talk with Larry Sutton, the founder and president of Element Funding in Georgia. You know, when we think about probably mentors that we've had in the past, or maybe even just good moms that we have, we're taught that if you always focus on doing the right things, that things will shake out in the end. And this conversation with Larry was a really good reminder of that. We talk a little bit about just his philosophy relative to running a business, sales in general, operations, leadership, and the value of consistency and predictability in communication, and not only how it can create value for you when times are good, but how it can keep you sustainable when we're managing through difficult times. Thanks for joining us on The Walk. All right, Larry, good morning. How are you, my friend?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you and the family hanging in with everything that's going on with the virus, the pandemic? You're not far from Atlanta proper, which is, compared to where I am, a big city and probably getting hit a whole lot different than we are.
Yeah, Atlanta is getting hit pretty hard. We're about 20 miles north, so we aren't experiencing what's going on downtown, but we're faring pretty well. It's I think my kids are tired of being quarantined, and I am too, but we'll get through it. So.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've got two teenage boys, one that's supposed to be in college, and I know you're about the same. They're doing the right thing, the smart thing, but it's hard to wrap, even as a grown up, it's hard to wrap your brain around not being able to do the things that you want to do. To me, emotionally, that's the weird. I know that I can't go to a restaurant right now, but that doesn't mean on Friday night when it's supposed to be date night that I don't want to go to a restaurant. And then you turn into a child emotionally. Why can't I go to a restaurant, even though you can't do it?
Well, I have two girls and one boy, my boy being the oldest. And I think the most disappointing thing for the girls, because they're still in college, is just being disrupted, right out of school 2 months early. And that was frustrating. And it was one of my daughter's freshman year at Tennessee. So it was just frustrating. But it is what it is. And hopefully we'll be back in the fall. So.
Well, as a freshman, it's hard to get acclimated. Thinking back to college, I know you went to Florida State. You're a proud Seminole. I'm curious, when you were in school, graduated, I think with a degree in economics or finance?
That's right.
Okay. What got you into the mortgage industry? How did you get connected, and why mortgage banking?
I knew that when I was majoring in economics that I wanted to be in financial services, but I didn't really know I wanted to be in mortgages. And I had this envision of being in maybe commercial banking or something like that. But when I graduated, obviously I went to school in Tallahassee, but when I graduated, I moved to South Florida and just kind of fell into the mortgage business right out of college. I was a loan officer at 21 years old, and I just fell in love with it. I really enjoyed the thrill of the kill and just kind of doing it. I was a sponge, so I just absorbed it all and enjoyed it. So I've been in it ever since.
Well, as a leader, I've gotten to know you as a leader. You have what feels to be a real solid mix of not only the sales side. You were talking, you love the thrill of the kill, the sales side, but also operationally, also how to run a business from an economic perspective. Do you think that the sponge part of you was more the sales side, or do you think that was the part of your brain that was more the operations and the economic side of the house?
I think it was the sales side. I got into that first, and that was my passion, and really still is. I honestly don't get to do that as much as I'd like to because of all the other things. But I think the operations piece and the numbers piece and all the other things just came later by just being around the industry and learning. But no, I'm a salesperson at heart. So.
Well, it's interesting because you don't always come across that way. You feel culturally to have the mix of everything, but that's good to hear that it's still the sales side that kind of drives you, and that passion's still there.
I think that's maturity. I think I used to be this crazy salesperson, and just over time you learn to sort of temper that and you see a lot of things, and you just become a little bit more measured in maybe your approach. So I think that's what I've learned.
Well,
So
maybe talk about that a little bit. So I know you spent 10, 11 years at Home Bank, which, when Home Bank was rolling, that company did some real unique and special things, industry related within the region. The company had a very unique culture about it as well that I think supported expansion and retention. Um, what did you and maybe this is probably not a short answer. What did you learn during that period of time that maybe helped you mature, but then prepare you for going out and starting a mortgage company?
it was a fantastic place to work for and learn. The customer service mentality at Home Bank was second to none, and I think that as I transitioned out of Home Bank, it really gave us the grounding to figure out on the next step of my career and the people that came with us, what we really wanted to sort of copy, if you will, as far as that goes. But no, it was great. I mean, I've sold to a very high level at Home Bank, and they gave me the opportunity to do that with just the just unmatched customer service and the ability to really stand by what you do, and that's important. So
What about things, and I'm careful when I ask this question because this isn't throwing Home Bank and Legacy Home Bank under the bus, because we can all do this to what I'm getting ready to ask. We can look in the mirror and do it to ourselves right now. But what were things that you learned from the way that maybe the business was run or divisionally or otherwise that you knew you didn't want to replicate?
That's a great question. And to be honest with you, you're not throwing them under the bus. There was a lot I learned not to do. So when we formed Element Funding in 2007, we knew we wanted to take that customer service philosophy and move it forward. But we wanted to take some of the things that, again, we learned not to do at Home Bank and be a little bit more financially minded, if you will. And we definitely changed that directive. We wanted to have a much bigger product portfolio. And Home Bank was good because they were diligent and they had just a phenomenal sales culture. The errors in the quiver at Home Bank were a little less than other competitors, and we just outsold it. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to give our current people that came with us in our new venture the ability to kind of do it all. And I think that we've done a fairly good job of that.
So maybe just a little more diversified?
A little more diversified and a little bit more opportunity to take all of the resources and use them on the street, whereas Home Bank was a little bit limited, very conservative. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but in today's market, you have to be a little more fluid. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that.
And then also at the same time, I'm assuming sort of balance, that you still can't be everything to everyone as you grow the company. You still have to know your sweet spot.
No question. And we are not shy about saying that. There are things in spaces that we do not want to go in, and we make that very apparent to our current sales force and even when we're recruiting. So that's okay. It's not for everybody, but we believe it's for a lot of people. So.
Are there ways that you, maybe sticking on that topic for a minute, are there ways that you coach an originator to wrap their arms around that not being everything to everyone? I mean, that's a hard thing to do, especially maybe if you're on the front end of your career and you are eating what you kill, you're commission only, right? And you really want to take care of a borrower that maybe is outside of the box of the sweet spot. And you feel like you should be able to, because I'm seeing my competition taking care of them. Are there things that you learned through your own experiences, or I'm just curious how you communicate through that and around that and still keep everyone on the same page?
Well, I don't pretend to have everything, but I think that, back to my initial comment about the product portfolio, I think we've got most things. It's not so much about being able to serve the customer. There are just different spaces inside of what many companies will do in our industry that we don't want to go into. For example, we're not big consumer direct advertisers. We're more, we like to say, we have street fighter loan officers.
Mm-hmm.
So they go out and they eat what they kill, right? And they focus the majority of their time on their core business, which is, realtors and builders and past customers. And we do predominantly purchase business in a normalized market. And we do that on purpose because we want to be able to sustainably grow our company and forecast. And you can't do that with refinance volume. That's just our style. I'm not saying it's better than others. But from a product perspective, I think we can serve most of what's out there. There are certain spaces that companies will get into, like brokering crazy non-QM loans that we may not have an appetite for, but that's just not our deal. So,
well, no, and those are all just individual business decisions. Like one of the things I know that I think you love about this industry is a loan might be a loan, but how you get from A to Z and all points in between can be very different from company to company, from originator to originator. It seems like every analogy I have, or most of them, are sports analogies. So I think about, college basketball, which we all missed, you especially, because Florida State was looking good.
They were. Yes.
Sorry to bring up a sore spot, but you look at like a team like University of Virginia that recently won a national championship. They're not going to run and shoot you to death, and they know that, and they recruit that way, and they have a particular methodology of playing the game that works specifically for them. And either you fit the model or you don't. But just because you don't run and gun doesn't mean you can't be successful. And
you're right. And I wake up every morning thinking about one thing, and I don't have a specific. When I say myself and my business partners don't have a specific exit strategy. That being said, we want to stay in business for a long period of time. So we just do not want to play in pardon my words here, we don't want to play in a stupid space. And, if it puts our company or our associates at risk, we just don't want to do it.
Right.
There are just some places and products today that you just want to stay away from, and we choose to do that. So, but we try to be very upfront with the people that want to join our organization about that. And for the most part, they understand it. So
I think it's a really unique thing about the industry too, especially when you drill down to the loan officer level. What you just described, I think, was playing the long game and not playing the short game. Not looking at a market opportunity right now and jumping in and throwing your cash and your capital at taking advantage of that market opportunity. But that's also tough for a loan officer sometimes.
It is.
Because that short game means something to them on a month-to-month basis.
It is. And this particular topic that we're talking about is very prevalent to the COVID situation that was going on now. There are companies out there that are playing in credit score spaces and doing things that could jeopardize their situation before this thing ends. I would rather take a little bit more measured response to some of the things that we're doing for the sake of being in business after this ends. Because when this does end, I think it's going to be incredibly busy and in a good way for our associates. And I think we just continue to try to message that to our people, because that's what they want to hear. And it's not always easy because the loan officers have to play a short game. They do.
Right.
So it's just, they have to be patient though, just like we do.
So going back 2000, so you started Element in 2007?
That's right. Okay.
Then we had 2008. So congratulations, good timing. Talk a little bit about 2008 and this, what we're going through right now. The reasons we're going through it are very different. Right. Obviously, the industry is being impacted. But tell us about 2008 and what you experienced, and maybe what you learned from that that's supporting today, which maybe you just talked about.
Well, it's funny. People told us that it was the worst time to get into something in 2007. And as I look back, and even at the time, we would say it was the best, because if we could make it through that, we could do anything. So I'll be honest with you. 2007 and 2008 was interesting. There was a liquidity crisis going on. We dealt with that. We have a phenomenal parent company that had enough foresight to figure that out too. But I don't see this situation quite as traumatic. I hate to say that, because it is traumatic. But what I mean is, to our industry, we will get through this, and I'm glad that the 2007 2008 happened, because it gave some calmness to what's going on now. But no, we came out of after 2008. We came out guns a blazing, and everything happened in a good way. So we grew our organization substantially. So we also believe that's going to happen now. So.
I was in a meeting this morning, and it was on a nonprofit that I serve on, and there was a pastor that gave the invocation and got us set up, and he was talking about the value of fear, and he was relating it to Scripture. But whether you relate it to Scripture or not, it was interesting to think about the value of fear, because there is value in fear, and if you handle it the right way, fear relates to being prepared, or at least pushing you to be prepared. We started our business in 2008. And similar advice. I remember we sat down with a mentor that said, you guys are going to be fine, but it's going to hurt for a little bit. Right. But once you get to the other side, the things that you learn, number one, will position you for success for the long term, but you'll learn things that you'll never forget. And so right now, I do have an element of fear, but it's not a negative fear. It's a fear that I think is just helping us stay ahead and be prepared, which sounds like kind of what you just described.
After the 2008 calamity, there was a big cleansing in the business as far as the competitors that still remained. It was almost like musical chairs. The same thing's going to happen here. If you play stupid, you could be left without a chair, and I think that that's just not where we want to be. So.
I hear you, and the short game, long game analogy, I think, is a good one, because we're also in the midst of not only how this pandemic is impacting liquidity potentially, and we all read the news and see the articles both ways on how that might go, but we're also in still a bit of a refi pop. So at the street level, everybody feels busy and sees the potential of some pretty good paychecks coming forward, which, if you're not careful, take your eye off the ball of the long game. And I know that's something you have to balance at the top of the house.
Yeah, and warehouse funding is a finite capacity, and so you've got to figure out how to facilitate these refi customers, and still maintain your long-term strategy as it relates to purchase business. I do think temporarily there's going to be some purchase softening, because we've got, unfortunately, people that are in spaces where they're going to be furloughed or maybe lose jobs or whatever, and that could soften the purchase market. Also, too, with this virus situation, people aren't exactly out looking for houses every day.
Right.
So with that being said, what we're trying to do is take that finance warehouse capacity, filter in the extra refinancing on top of it, so that it can equal out the volume. But again, when this is over, I think you're going to see that this refinance stuff will still continue, because we're going to have a great year as far as rates go. But I'm hoping that the purchase business will kick back in, and we can do predominantly more purchase business, because that's what we're focused on. So.
Going back to the human element of all of this, and so we're past 2008, we're now into 2020, and the crisis that we're dealing with at the moment. We've talked about loan officers, and communicating with LOs is such a unique beast. It's hard to talk to folks in other industries about that, because it's maybe difficult to relate. Sure, there's other industries where you have commissioned salespeople. Right. But you were talking about capacity. There's a finite amount of capacity, and at some point you got to pump the brakes, and that doesn't feel right if you're a commissioned originator. What about the rest of the staff right now? When you look at ops staff, support staff, folks that aren't making the same amount of income, that probably manage their monthly budgets a little bit differently, and probably are more sensitive to the health of the company differently than an originator. Mm-hmm. Are you noticing any emotion from those folks right now that are a little bit unique that you're having to support?
I'm sure there is. We try to over communicate. We try to make sure that everyone's feeling supported and safe and everything. We've got a tremendous virtual platform that allows our folks to really not miss a beat by not being in the offices. But I will say we're not slow, and we're having record months despite all of this. So I really don't think our ops people are feeling like there's any sort of issue as it relates to their jobs or anything like that, because there isn't.
Right.
But I don't think they're feeling it. I think they're feeling very probably overworked at this point, and that's fair because the business is still coming in. So not yet. But again, I think it's more of the human element side where people just are going stir crazy, and you just gotta, we're sending meals out to our ops people, just for their families, and just try to keep them supported, and whoever needs help, we have an open door policy, so that's what it is. These are the most important people in the world to us, and sales and ops, and so we're trying to just wrap our arms around them to the extent we can.
Well, good for you also supporting some of those local businesses and getting food out, takeout to your staff. I asked that question only because I've noticed in the last several weeks, people's reactions to things seem abnormal, and not just because of something that might be specific to the mortgage industry. And I think it's fair to say it's abnormal because we're all in an abnormal situation right now. We have people in our home, that our own family that isn't used to us being in the house at a particular period. My dog is completely confused right now.
My dog loves it.
Really?
He doesn't understand why everybody's around all the time, but he likes it.
My dog just thinks he can sneak treats from several different people, different than he normally can. But along with that, we have kids that are home that aren't normally home. We have parents that maybe we can't go check on the way that we would normally want to check on them. And other things that then impact the way we communicate with each other and the decisions that we make. I think you bring up a good point that our industry right now, at least in the moment, is busy. So that busy is keeping everybody on point at some level. But you would assume that emotional creep in here and there. And I also would think that the way that you've built the company, and without really any desire to grow dramatically across the country, that makes it maybe a little bit easier to keep it tight and keep that communication with your staff.
And that was by design. I've told you often, as I love to get around to all these places that we're trying to recruit in. And, as you know, we're in a 5-state area in the Southeast, but I want to be able to take a short flight or a drive and see everybody. And today I know everybody by first name, and it's great. The day that starts not to happen is where you got to be really careful. And that's just our style. I'm not saying big companies aren't great places. It's just, that's sort of our style. So
are you involved in, this is a random question, are you involved in any other businesses outside of the industry? And the reason why I ask is because other businesses are obviously dealing with this and impacted in different ways.
When you say, am I involved, what do you mean?
Like, do you happen to have are you a partner in a restaurant, or do you have some ownership in another? No.
I'm connected to people that are,
sure.
But I'm not, I don't own any other interest in that. No.
Well, and I ask because I do think that our industry has this slightly delayed reaction to maybe what's coming versus a restaurant who one day had 2,000 people walking through the door, and then the very next day you're at zero.
No question.
And that's a slam the door, difficult game. Ours is a little bit different, and maybe not less difficult, because there's this drawn out bleed a little bit if you didn't manage things appropriately. You something that's easy to tell in the 20 minutes you and I have been talking is your communication is very consistent and predictable. And I would think, and from experience know, that your teammates appreciate that consistency and predictability, whether it's you or somebody at another company. I think I have found that bad news is not always so bad, as long as the news and the solutions are delivered with consistency and predictability, and things don't sneak up on you.
And honesty. Yeah. You got to be honest, and you got to tell them really what's going on. And a lot of companies a lot of leaders at companies I've seen, unfortunately, will try to shelter. And you just got to be careful doing that. People are absolutely okay with the truth. You just got to tell it to them.
Great point. Great way to close also. Larry, president of Element Funding, an all-around great guy. Thank you for spending a few minutes today. Anything that we didn't cover that you want to throw out there?
No, I appreciate it. It was great being with you, Eric, and thanks for your support.
No, you got it. Hey, stay healthy, keep the family and the company healthy, and hang in there. We'll talk soon.
You too, man. Take care.
All right, bud.